Imagine walking into like a really bustling gathering, right? Super loud chatter about everything you can think of. Kings, wars, food, gossip, you name it.
Yeah, total information overload.
Exactly. And then what if, like, amidst all that noise, this quiet figure arrives and just shifts the entire conversation? Suddenly, everyone's talking about the deepest questions of existence.
Hmm.
Well, today, we're diving into basically just such a scene. This isn't just, ancient philosophy history. It's really about how we navigate our own minds, our own mental chatter, and what we choose to focus on in a world that's just full of distractions.
It's incredibly relevant.
So let's unpack this. What's the text we're digging into today, and what's our kind of mission here?
We are opening up a really profound text called the Poṭṭhapāda Sutta. It records this pivotal conversation about consciousness, the nature of the self, and crucially, what actually merits our attention. And what's fascinating, I think, is how the conversation itself unfolds. It goes from this, casual, noisy chatter to these really fundamental questions about the very nature of our experience.
Right.
It encourages us to look at not just what we perceive, but how we perceive, and maybe more importantly, why.
So the mission for us, for you listening.
Yeah, our mission in this deep dive is really to pull out the essential insights from this ancient wisdom. We want to help you understand how focusing your mind and maybe questioning your assumptions can lead to some profound clarity and well-being.
We'll explore these different views on perception and self and try to figure out which questions actually lead somewhere useful towards liberation.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Where does this all happen?
Right, so we're in Savatthi at the Jeta Grove. That's in Athapika's Park, a place the Buddha often stayed.
Familiar ground.
Very. And the Buddha is out doing his alms round one morning, but it's still pretty early. So he thinks, okay, I'll pop over and visit Poṭṭhapāda. Poṭṭhapāda is described as a wanderer, and he's staying nearby at a place called Malakarama.
An impromptu visit.
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
And when the Buddha gets there, it's quite a scene he walks into. Poṭṭhapāda is not alone. Not at all.
Oh.
He's with this huge group, maybe 300 other renunciants, and they are, let's just say, not having a quiet, contemplative morning.
Okay.
The text is very specific. It calls their talk noisy, loud, high-pitched talk about, quote, trivial topics.
And trivial really means trivial here, doesn't it? What kind of stuff were they talking about?
Oh, it lists everything. Talk of kings, robbers, ministers, armies, danger, war.
Sounded big stuff.
But also talk of food, drink, clothes, beds, garlands, perfumes.
The everyday stuff.
Relatives, conveyances, villages, towns, cities, countries. Even women, men, heroes, street talk, talk at watering places, talk of ghosts. Diverse talk, talk of the world, the ocean, existence, non-existence. I mean, it's basically the ancient equivalent of scrolling through a chaotic social media feed.
That's a perfect analogy, just noise.
Exactly. It perfectly captures that mental clutter, right? The constant stream of information and conversations that often don't really nourish us.
But Poṭṭhapāda sees the Buddha coming.
He does. He spots him from a distance, and immediately he tells his assembly, quiet down, quiet down. The Blessed One prefers quiet. Be silent. Maybe he'll think our assembly is worthy of a visit.
And they actually listen. 300 noisy wanderers.
Apparently so. To their credit, the text says the wanderers indeed fall silent.
Amazing. A sudden hush.
So the Buddha arrives.
He approaches, they exchange greetings, and then the Buddha asks, quite simply, so what were you all discussing just now? What was the topic when I interrupted?
And despite all that earlier noise...
Right, despite the gossip and gross stories, Poṭṭhapāda says they were actually discussing the cessation of perception. The term is saññā-nirodha. Whoa, talk about a pivot. From street talk to the cessation of perception. That's quite a jump.
It really is. And Poṭṭhapāda doesn't just mention it. He then lays out 4 common views that were floating around among other ascetics and Brahmins about how perception actually ceases.
Okay, so what were people thinking back then? How could perception just stop? Did they have ideas about why?
Well, the views were pretty diverse. One idea was that perception just arises and ceases.
Yeah.
Without any cause or condition. It just happens. Spontaneously.
Like a light bulb flickering on and off for no apparent reason.
Kind of, yeah. Just random.
Yeah.
Then another view was that perception is the self. And this self, it sort of comes and goes. And when it goes, perception goes with it.
Okay, perception as a feature of a mobile self.
And then there were views involving external forces. Some believe that really powerful, influential ascetics or Brahmins could actually pull in and pull out someone's perception.
Like mind control.
A bit like that, yeah. Or Similarly, that powerful deities could make perception come and go. External manipulation, essentially.
So some quite out there theories. Poṭṭhapāda lays all these out. Then what?
Then he turns to the Buddha. He says he remembered him, knew he was skilled in these matters, and asks him directly, "How, venerable sir, does the cessation of perception actually come about?" He wants the definitive answer.
He's cutting through the speculation.
Exactly. And the Buddha's response is immediate, very direct. He says that first view, that perception arises and ceases without cause or condition, fundamentally mistaken, just wrong.
Okay, so it's not random.
Not at all. He asserts perception arises and ceases with cause and condition. And the key factor he introduces, it's training. The Pali word is sikka.
Training? Okay, that changes everything. It makes it active, internal, something you do rather than something that just happens to you or is done to you.
Precisely. It shifts the whole framework.
So how does this training work? What does the Buddha actually describe? Is it just thinking harder?
No, it's much more systematic. He then details this progressive path of mental training, using the stages of meditative absorption, the shanas, as the prime example. He shows how specific kinds of perceptions cease, and new, more refined perceptions arise one after the other.
Like climbing a ladder of awareness.
That's a good way to think about it. You're systematically peeling back layers of mental noise, moving from the really coarse stuff to incredibly subtle states of mind.
So it's not just about sitting quietly, it's about actively refining your attention, your perception itself. Can you give us a feel for that? Like what changes?
Sure. So in the first jhana, for instance, you deliberately detach from sensual pleasures and unwholesome states of mind. You let go of wanting this or pushing away that.
Okay.
And what arises then is a perception associated with rapture and pleasure, but it's born of detachment, not of getting what you want sensually. So the old, coarser sensual perception ceases.
Ah, so one type of perception is replaced by another, more refined one.
Exactly. Then, moving to the second jhana, even the initial and sustained thinking processes quiet down. There's this profound inner tranquility, a unification of mind. The perception tied to detachment ceases, and a new, subtle perception tied to concentration arises, still with rapture and pleasure.
It gets progressively quieter, deeper.
Yes, and this continues. In the third jhana, even the rapture fades, and you abide in equanimity, mindful, aware, experiencing a subtle physical pleasure. The perception tied to concentration ceases, replaced by one tied to equanimity and pleasure.
And it keeps going.
It does. Through the fourth jhana, where pleasure and pain are abandoned for pure equanimity and mindfulness, and then into the formless attainments, infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness. Each stage involves the cessation of the previous perception and the arising of a new, subtler one, all achieved through training.
That's a remarkable description of consciously reshaping experience. It really drives home that consciousness isn't just a fixed thing we have.
That is the core insight here, I think. It's not static. Perception, consciousness, it's something you can cultivate, a skill. Each jhana is like, well, a deliberate rewiring of the mind, showing you can systematically dismantle distraction and build clarity, not just thinking about it, but actually experiencing it.
So how does this lead to the actual cessation?
The Buddha explains that a monk, through this training in self-awareness, gradually reaches what he calls the peak of perception, saññā-nirodha. At this peak, the person realizes thinking, intending, perceiving. It's actually coarser now. It would be better not to intend.
Ah, so the intention itself becomes the disturbance.
Exactly. And by consciously not intending, not forming volitions towards perception, those subtle perceptions cease. And crucially, other grosser perceptions don't arise to take their place. That is how the cessation of perception is reached through stages with full awareness.
Wow, Poṭṭhapāda must have been stunned.
He says as much. He confirms he'd never heard of such a gradual step-by-step cessation before. It was a completely new framework for him.
And does he ask if there's just one peak, one way this happens?
He does. He asks, is there one peak of perception or are there many peaks?
Good question.
And the Buddha clarifies that, well, he teaches both one peak and diverse peaks. It depends on which stage of cessation someone actually reaches and stops at. It shows a kind of flexibility in the path tailored to the individual's attainment.
That makes sense. So, okay, they've established perception isn't random, it's trainable, it can cease gradually. Where does the conversation go next? It seems like Poṭṭhapāda's mind is really working now.
It is. He brings up another deep question. The relationship between perception, saññā, and knowledge. Does perception come first, then knowledge? Or knowledge first, then perception? Or do they happen at the exact same time?
The chicken or the egg of cognition.
Sort of. And the Buddha's answer is clear. Perception arises first, Then knowledge arises based on that perception. You perceive something, and then you know it. He says one understands, because of this perception, knowledge arose in me.
So perception provides the raw data, and knowledge is the understanding derived from it.
That's a good way to put it. This sequence is really important. And building on that, Poṭṭhapāda asks the million-dollar question. Is perception the self? Or is perception one thing and the self another?
Ah, the big one. How does the Buddha handle that?
Well, rather than giving a direct yes or no, the Buddha turns it back on Poṭṭhapāda. He asks, well, what kind of self do you understand there to be?
Putting him on the spot. What does Poṭṭhapāda say?
He offers three possibilities, likely common views at the time. First, he suggests a gross self, oriko attapaṭilābha. This is a physical, material self, made of the four great elements needing physical food.
The body, basically.
Essentially, yes. And the Buddha says, okay, even if we assume that's the self, perception would still be different from it. Why? Because perceptions come and go, they arise and cease constantly, but that gross material body remains relatively stable through those changes.
Right, like watching different shows on the same TV, the image changes, the TV...
Perfect analogy. So, Poṭṭhapāda tries again. He suggests a mind-made self, manomaya tabainapho. This one is also described as having limbs and faculties, but it's made of mind stuff, not gross matter.
Like an astral body, maybe?
Possibly something like that. But the Buddha applies the same logic. Even if that were the self, perception would still be distinct. Perceptions arise and cease, but this mind-made form is considered relatively stable while they flicker past.
Still the same problem. Third try.
Third try. Poṭṭhapāda proposes a formless self made of perception, avyākata saññā-nirodha, a self purely made of consciousness or perception itself.
Now that sounds closer. Is that the self?
Still no, according to the Buddha. Same reasoning. Even if the self were formless and made of perception, specific perceptions still arise and cease. The feeling of happiness arises, then ceases. The perception of blue arises, then ceases. But the supposed underlying formless self would remain while these perceptions change. So perception is still distinct.
So no matter how you define self, gross, mind-made, or formless perception is always presented as something different, something that fluctuates independently.
Exactly. The Buddha basically shows that our changing experience, perception, can't be equated with any static thing we might label as self. It really challenges that core assumption of a fixed, unchanging me sitting behind the experiences.
How does the Buddha wrap up this point about self and perception?
He concludes quite gently that it would be difficult for Poṭṭhapāda, given his background, his different views, preferences, practices, to definitively know whether perception is the self or different from it.
That's interesting. Not saying it's unknowable, but difficult for him given his current framework.
Precisely. It suggests that maybe you need a different foundation, perhaps the kind of training they were just discussing, to see this clearly, rather than just trying to figure it out intellectually from a position of mixed views.
Okay, so perception isn't the self, and maybe intellectual debate isn't the best tool here. Poṭṭhapāda then shifts again, right? He brings up those famous philosophical questions.
Yes, he asks about the undetermined questions, or the avyākata. These are the classic speculative points, usually listed as 10 or 14.
Like, is the world eternal?
Yes. Is it eternal or not eternal? Is it finite or infinite?
Is the soul the same as the body, or is the soul different from the body?
And the questions about what happens after death to the Tathagata, a Buddha. Does he exist? Does he not exist? Does he both exist and not exist? Does he neither exist nor not exist?
The big metaphysical head-scratchers. Why does Poṭṭhapāda bring these up?
Probably because these were the hot topics debated endlessly by wanderers and philosophers at the time. He wants to know the Buddha's stance.
And the Buddha's stance is?
Famously, he states very clearly, I leave these unanswered.
He just refuses to play the game. Why?
He gives a very pragmatic reason. He says, and this is a crucial quote, these questions are not connected with the goal, are not connected with the Dhamma, are not fundamental to the holy life, do not lead to disenchantment, dispassion, cessation, tranquility, higher knowledge, enlightenment, or nibbana. That is why I have left them unanswered.
Wow. That's incredibly direct. It's basically saying these debates are a waste of time if your goal is liberation from suffering.
Exactly. It's a powerful statement about prioritizing our energy. Focus on what actually yields a practical, beneficial result, not on endless speculation that doesn't lead to well-being.
So if he's not answering those speculative questions, Poṭṭhapāda naturally asks.
Well, what do you declare then?
Right. What is worth talking about?
And the Buddha replies with the absolute core of his teaching. He declares, this is suffering, dukkha.
Okay.
This is the origin of suffering, somebody dying.
Mm-hmm.
This is the cessation of suffering, nirodha.
Right.
And this is the path leading to the cessation of suffering. Ma again? The Four Noble Truths.
The fundamental diagnosis, cause, prognosis, and treatment plan.
Perfectly put. Now, why declare these? The Buddha explains using almost the same phrasing as before, but in the positive. Because these are connected with the goal, connected with the Dhamma, fundamental to the holy life, leading to disenchantment, dispassion, cessation, tranquility, higher knowledge, enlightenment, and nibbana. That is why I have declared them.
It draws such a clear line. Speculation versus practical path. Theory versus therapy, almost.
Yes. It shows the Buddha is less concerned with abstract metaphysics and entirely focused on providing a verifiable path to end suffering. He's like a spiritual doctor.
And to really hammer home the point about the uselessness of speculation on things you don't know, he uses some parables, right?
He does. Brilliant ones. First, there's a man who declares he's fallen in love with and wants to marry the most beautiful woman in the entire country.
Okay, a romantic fellow.
But then people ask him, okay, great. Do you know her name, her family, her caste, what village or town she lives in? Is she tall, short, medium, dark, fair?
And the answer is?
He has to admit, no, I don't know any of those things. The Buddha points out his desire is completely baseless. He doesn't even know who or what he's seeking.
It's just hot air. Got it. What's the other parable?
The second one is a man building a magnificent staircase right in the middle of a crossroads. People ask him, wow, impressive staircase. Where does it lead? And he says, it leads up to a grand palace.
Okay.
So they ask, great. Which palace? Which direction is it? East, west, south, north? How high is it? And again, the man has to admit, I don't actually know.
Uh-huh. Building a staircase to nowhere.
Exactly. His effort is pointless because he doesn't know the destination. These parables are just genius, aren't they? They make the point so clearly.
They really do. It's all about grounding claims in actual knowledge or experience.
Precisely. And the Buddha directly applies these parables to those other ascetics and Brahmins, the ones claiming there's this absolutely happy self, free from illness after death.
The ones Poṭṭhapāda mentioned earlier.
Right. The Buddha challenges their claim. Okay, do you yourselves know this state? Have you experienced it, even for a single night or day? Do you know the path that leads to this state? Have you even heard from gods who have attained it and come back to tell you?
And presumably the answer to all of these is no.
They have to admit no. So the Buddha concludes their claims are unwarranted, or you could say groundless, like the man desiring the unknown beauty or building the staircase to the unknown palace.
It's a very pragmatic, almost scientific approach. Stick to what can be known, experienced, and verified.
Absolutely. And building on this idea of what is knowable, the Buddha then formally describes the three kinds of self-attainment, attapaṭilābha, that he does teach about. He revisits the concepts Poṭṭhapāda brought up earlier.
The gross self, the mind-made self, and the formless self.
Yes. The material self needing food, the mind-made self with limbs, and the formless self made of perception. He acknowledges these are ways we experience or conceive of ourselves.
But didn't he just argue that perception isn't the self?
But here's the crucial twist. He says he teaches about these three modes of self-attainment, specifically for the purpose of their abandonment.
So it's not about validating them as ultimately real selves, but understanding these experiences or concepts of self so we can let go of clinging to them.
Exactly. He teaches a doctrine for the abandonment of these ways of identifying. And he emphasizes that following this path, this teaching, isn't some grim, unpleasant duty.
What's it like then?
He says that by following it, defilements will be abandoned, wholesome qualities will increase, and one will realize the fullness of wisdom for oneself right here, right now. And importantly, this path leads to delight, joy, tranquility, mindfulness, full awareness, and a happy dwelling. It feels good.
That's a key point. The path to liberation isn't necessarily miserable.
Not at all. And then he uses the staircase analogy again, but flips it. Now, it's like a man who knows the palace, he can see it, he's standing right beneath it, and he builds the staircase specifically to reach that known palace.
So that effort is warranted.
Precisely. Because the goal, the palace, or in this case, the understanding and abandonment of these self-concepts leading to liberation, is known. And the path, the staircase or the teaching, leads directly to it. Teaching this, the Buddha implies, is warranted and useful.
Okay, that makes sense. But then someone else jumps in, right? Citta.
Yes, another wanderer present, Citta Hatthisāriputta. He seems to have slightly misunderstood the point about the three types of self-attainment.
What was his confusion?
He suggests that if one type of self-attainment is currently being experienced, say the gross material self, then the other two, the mind-made and the formless, must be totally false or void at that time. Like only one can be true at once.
An either kind of thinking.
Exactly. And the Buddha corrects him gently. He says, no, it's not that the others become false. It's simply that when you are experiencing or designating yourself through the lens of the gross self, the terms mind-made self or formless self are just, not the relevant designations at that moment. They aren't the labels being used.
So it's not about absolute truth or falsehood, but about the appropriate description or label for the current state. Like, you wouldn't call an adult a baby anymore, but that doesn't make the concept of baby false.
That's getting very close.
Yeah.
The Buddha uses his own brilliant analogy to make this crystal clear, the milk analogy.
Ah, yes, milk to ghee. How does that work?
He says, look, you start with milk. When it's milk, you call it milk. You don't call it curds or butter or ghee.
Right.
Then that milk changes, becomes curds. Now you call it curds. You don't call it milk anymore, or butter or ghee.
Makes sense.
Then the curds become butter. Called it butter, not milk, not curds, not ghee, and so on, through butter, ghee, and even the cream of ghee, or finest part. Each stage gets its own name, its own designation, appropriate to its current state.
So the underlying substance is transforming, and the name we use changes with it. One name isn't truer than another in an absolute sense. It just fits a particular phase.
Exactly. It's such a fantastic aha moment, isn't it? It shows that these different self-attainments are like the stages of milk transforming. They are descriptions based on context and the current state of being or experience.
It takes the philosophical weight off which self is real and makes it about understanding how we use labels.
Precisely. The Buddha concludes by saying these terms, gross self, mind-made self, formless self, are just worldly terms, worldly expressions, worldly usages, worldly designations. He says the Tathagata, the Buddha, uses these terms too, but without clinging to them as representing some ultimate fixed reality.
So understand the designations, use them when appropriate, but don't mistake the label for some permanent solid thing.
You've got it. It's a very practical, liberating way to look at identity and experience.
And what was the immediate effect of this whole conversation, this deep dive on Poṭṭhapāda and Citta?
The impact was profound and immediate. Poṭṭhapāda, deeply moved by the clarity and wisdom, straightaway declares himself a lay follower of the Buddha, taking refuge. And Citta Hatthisāriputta, the one who asked about the designations, was so inspired he asked for ordination as a monk right then and there. And the text adds that shortly after becoming a monk, through practice, he became an arahant, fully liberated in that very life.
Incredible. It shows the power of a clear explanation hitting fertile ground.
It really does.
Yeah.
So for you listening, what are the key takeaways from this?
Well, first, I think, is that profound wisdom in focusing, distinguishing between questions that actually lead somewhere beneficial towards liberation and those that are just, fascinating but ultimately distracting speculation. The Buddha's focus on suffering and its end is paramount.
Absolutely. And second, the power of training. This dialogue reveals this incredibly structured path to jhanas, showing how mental training progressively refines perception. It proves that conscious, dedicated effort can lead to tangible results, deep clarity, tranquility, even happiness. It's not just theoretical.
Right. And third, that fluidity of self. The whole discussion about the self-attainments, and especially that milk analogy, it's such a powerful invitation to reconsider our fixed ideas about who we are, to see self maybe more as a dynamic process, a series of designations, rather than some unchanging core entity we have to find or define.
Well said. It loosens the grip of identity in a very helpful way.
So we always like to end with a thought for you to take away and ponder. Building on this, what are the trivial topics, the endless scrolling, or maybe the unanswered questions, the grand speculations that consume your mental energy today?
That's a great question for reflection.
And how might focusing your attention really deliberately, like those ancient practitioners aiming for clarity, how might focusing on what truly matters for your well-being, how might that transform your own understanding and your experience of life?